my spookies. Before we start our very special Halloween Day show, which marks the 4-year anniversary of the first episode of Weekly Spooky, I just want to say thank you so much. It has been an incredible October for the program. We've never had so many listeners, so many people joining us in the fun. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. And I hope you'll stick around, but I understand that many of you will move on and return here when spooky season comes back next year, and that's totally okay. But it's caused me to think a lot about why people like me celebrate Halloween all year long. The feelings Halloween gives are special because when I was a child, I felt like I truly belonged because the whole world was into the kind of weird, offbeat, and magical things I was into. I think that's why so many of us chase Halloween. We want to chase that high of fitting in, but not by changing ourselves, no, but by the world realizing the joy of how we live. So for those of you who are going to stick around for the rest of the year, I'll be bringing you your spooky on the weekly. I promise you that. And there'll be so much to cover, so many new stories, new programs. And don't forget, Christmas is kind of a ghostly time of year, so it's time for the show. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. We all love to spend our Halloween time someplace scary, but maybe not as scary as a hospital. But what if the medical offices were no longer what you were used to? What if you slipped into another world full of mystery, of creatures and danger?
Feel the chill in the air. Listen to the leaves rustle as they die and fall to the ground. It is Halloween. You will experience tales of horror, ghosts, and death. It is not recommended for the weak at heart. Join me for a tale of Halloween. This is Weekly Spooky.
Hello, my spookies. It's Halloween. I'm your host and narrator, Enrique Couto. 4 years ago, on this very day, I first spoke into a microphone to you all. And since then, it's been quite the journey. 223 fictional stories, over 50 terrifying intrudes, and countless other programs you've all enjoyed a whole hell of a lot. I can't tell you how grateful I am for it all. But I also can't help but remember, it all started with one simple story by an author named Shane Migliavacca and his story, Mischief Night. Well, tonight, Shane has blessed us with another terrifying tale of Halloween night. But before we get to it, please make sure you're subscribed because the spooky season never ends here. New shows will be publishing every single Wednesday. I promise you, can't stop, won't stop. And if you want to support us in a very direct way, you can go to weeklyspooky.com and click on Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you get an extra story each month and my undying gratitude, as well as many other behind-the-scenes treats and maybe a few tricks. And something that doesn't cost you a single penny but does help the show a lot is leaving a rating and maybe a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It takes you just a moment, and it helps us find even more spookies. But now, my friends, while I am full of gratitude, I think it's time I become full of fear. And I think you all want to join me in that. If you don't, then why do you keep showing up? night after night, for Weekly Spooky. So now, my dear listeners, we're going to get to the story after these quick words from our sponsors. Inbetween by Shane Migliavacca. Ruby Salazar felt herself slipping. She gripped the wood armrests of the chair in the waiting room. She jolted awake from her quick nap, only to lock her eyes on a wildly grinning face painted on a large, illuminated plastic pumpkin sitting on a nearby desk. "You have somebody coming for you, hun?" the ultrasound tech asked as she smiled gently at Ruby. "No. You were my last for the day. You can rest here, or I can see if there's a room free." The tech smiled again. Ruby smiled weakly. "Here's good. Thank you. Somebody will call you tomorrow with the results. If you need anything, I'll be at my desk." The tech left, leaving Ruby alone. Alone in a medical nightmare on Halloween of all days. A light in the corner of the waiting room flickered and buzzed softly, crying out for a replacement. The tech sat down at her desk, the seat creaking under her. Ruby sunk down in her chair as she pulled up the hood of her black sweatshirt to cover her head. Closing her eyes, she allowed herself to drift off. She started to slip again. Her head was spinning. Her body felt as if it was melting into the chair. Ruby's eyes snapped open. She stood in a long, featureless hallway, bathed in a crimson glow. A steady hum reverberated from one end of the hall. Walking toward the humming, she realized the floor was made of water, which rippled at her feet as she walked. As Ruby made her way down the hall, her progress was slow. What should have been a short walk felt like a 10-minute one. As she neared the end of the hall, the source of the humming came into view. Two large metal forks parallel to one another. The space between them shimmered like the sun on an ocean wave. "No!" A voice like gravel filled her head. "Do not!" Ruby fell out of the waiting room chair onto the carpeted floor. She'd been dreaming. Ruby looked around the waiting room. Her face was red with embarrassment. She was all alone. She stood. The tech was gone. The light over her desk was off. Even the faux jack-o'-lantern was dark. How long had she been out? Glancing up at the clock, she was astonished to see it appeared stuck. The clock would advance a minute and then snap back to the previous minute. Over and over. Ruby poked her head in a couple of the exam rooms. Empty. She went to the door leading out of the ultrasound area. Locked. She could see the hallway beyond through the glass of the door. It was empty as well. "Hello?" Ruby called out, pulling at the door handle. "Hello? Anybody?" She banged on the door frantically at first, becoming more angry with each blow. "Come on, somebody!" She went to the phone on the tech's desk. Static. She hit buttons, trying to get a dial tone. Nothing worked. Ruby sat at the desk for some time, her head resting on her arms. She was trapped. Feeling desperate, she got up and climbed onto the desk. She pushed a large ceiling tile out, raining dust down on her. Climbing up onto the metal frame that held the ceiling tiles in place, Ruby was thankful she was small. She could feel the tiles buckle under her weight. "Just a little ways," she whispered. She made her way past the door frame and out over the hallway. "Shit!" Ruby cried out, cutting her hand on an exposed screw. The surprise and pain threw off her balance, and she fell through a tile, catching herself at the last minute on the metal frame. Ruby dangled over the hallway. Dropping down, she landed on her feet. Son of a bitch! Her legs stung with pain. Ruby rubbed her sore legs as she hunted for a bathroom to clean her injured hand. All was silent save for the sound of her breathing and the hum of the overhead lights. She soon found some antiseptic, gauze, and bandages, which admittedly was not that difficult, given her hospital surroundings. She sat in an empty examination room. The distinct possibility that there wasn't another living soul in the hospital was starting to sink in. How could she be all alone? What had happened? Maybe there'd been some kind of fire drill or bomb scare, and she slept right through it. From what she'd seen, it was possible. Some of the rooms and the hall were a mess. Beds were overturned and all manner of papers and equipment littered the floor, as if everybody had rushed out all at once. Yeah, that had to be it. Everybody was outside. She was the only dumbass in the hospital. She went to the nearest window. Outside, smoke hung thick in the air, making it hard to see very far. A large shadow passed over the window, headed towards the roof, skittering up the side of the hospital, making sharp, clicking sounds as it went. Ruby jumped back. She felt her heart race. That hadn't been her imagination. There had been something out there. Sitting behind the desk at the third-floor nurse's station, Ruby pondered her next move. She picked up the receiver at the desk. Instead of a dial tone, there was a constant howl of static. Next, she tried the computer, which flickered with a blank, bright red screen when Ruby tried to log on. No hope there. From somewhere on the other end of the floor, something crashed to the ground in a loud, metallic bang. Ruby jumped up from her chair, knocking it over. That thing. Had it come looking for her? She dropped down, hiding behind the desk. There was a sharp click-clack that grew closer and closer. Ruby had to calm herself as she felt her heart start to race. There was another loud crash as something fell to the floor. A stale, rotting smell grew stronger, causing her to involuntarily gag. The click-clack stopped. Had it heard? Pulling herself under the desk, she waited, trying not to breathe. Something knocked the phone receiver from its cradle. It swung back and forth briefly, before the whole thing smashed to the floor. The phone was quickly followed by the computer keyboard and monitor. Ruby stifled her urge to cry out. A shadow fell over the floor in front of her, before retreating. Suddenly there was a deafening scraping sound as something tried to pull the desk apart. She screamed and scrambled away from the desk, only to come face to face with the beast stalking her. 6 red eyes stared back at Ruby from a thing that looked like a mad scientist had mashed a spider and a crab together. Mandibles clicked excitedly in the creature's cavernous mouth. A long, hairy leg poked at her, just out of reach. Snatching up the desk chair, Ruby held it up like a lion tamer from an old movie. "Back off!" she ordered, trying to sound intimidating. The spider crab thing hissed at her. "Fuck you too!" She hurled the chair at the thing with an angry swing. Not staying to see if the chair hit the beast, Ruby ran down the hall. She skidded to a stop at an intersection. Written on the wall in something disgustingly brown was a message. "This way, if you want to live." Under the message was a crudely drawn arrow pointing left, and left she went. The spider crab thing screeched as it skittered down the hall in pursuit. Ruby bounded down a couple of flights of stairs, following another arrow. She stopped to catch her breath. How many levels did the damn hospital have? 2 more flights and she reached the bottom. A single metal door greeted her. A small glass window revealed little of what waited on the other side, save for darkness. Up above came the sound of something pounding against one of the metal doors. Fuck it. She pulled the door open, stepping into a dimly lit corridor. Broken glass crackled under her feet. Ruby pressed on until she came to a door. Opening the door caused something to clang loudly. Looking up, there was an empty metal can hanging down. It swung back and forth, banging on the door. Inside was some kind of storage area. Metal chairs and trays were haphazardly jammed into the room. The next room had the same kind of can in the doorway rig. Larger than the previous room, this one was a boiler room. Water dripped from pipes and steam hissed out of metal floor grates. Ruby shivered. It was something from a nightmare. This whole thing was. A flicker of light from the far end of the room caught her eye. In a small area behind the rusty, rumbling boiler was some kind of shrine. Trinkets, jewelry, faded photos, even bits of hair hung on the stained wall. "What the hell?" she muttered. "What do you have?" a man's gruff voice asked. Ruby spun around. A large, scraggly man stood, waiting. His long, thinning hair was pulled back into a ponytail, and he wore stained and faded janitor's coveralls. "You work here?" Ruby asked, trying not to sound scared. "Forever and a day," the man replied. "Custodial technician. That's their bullshit term for janitor." He chuckled. "Makes them feel better when I have to clean the shitter." "What's going on? Everybody's gone and there's a monster." The man nodded. "You fell through a crack. You're stuck." "Stuck? Stuck where?" "Out of time. Another world. Hell. Take your pick." Ruby felt weak. Leaning against the wall, she tried to make sense of what he told her. "Well, you want to get out of here?" The janitor grumbled after a few minutes. Yeah, I want to get out of here." "Good. I don't want a roommate. It's simple. You pay me, I show you the way." "Pay?" She shivered. "I want food or something important to you. Something with meaning. A story. I collect them." He pointed to the shrine. "People that pass through here gives me a bit of living again. The only things in this hospital are me and those hissing bastards up there." Ruby rummaged through her pockets. "What if someone doesn't have something to pay you?" The man licked his lips and flashed her a greasy smile. "Then I send you on your way. And the way you were blundering through here, they'll get you. Lickety-split. Or you go and bring me something from up there." "Shit," Ruby whispered. Ruby pushed roughly past the janitor. She hadn't eaten in some time and it was starting to affect her mood. Maybe she could mug a trick-or-treater for some candy on her way home. If this nightmare ever ends, that is, she thought. She opened the door across from the boiler room. "If you're looking for the way out, won't do no good. It's locked. And I got the key." The janitor chuckled. "If I'm going back up there, I'm getting something to defend myself. Wouldn't happen to have a rocket launcher, would you?" This made the man laugh harder. Inside the room, there were some old folded tables and rusty IV stands. Grabbing one of the stands, Ruby swung it, feeling its weight in her hands. It could work. Ruby could feel the bemused janitor watching her. Next, she needed something sharp. In a utility closet, she found a broken floor lamp. Ruby carefully unscrewed the long glass light bulb tube. Using a thick rag for protection, she smashed the tube against a wall to create a jagged glass shard. Carrying her finds back to the boiler room, Ruby cleared a space on a work table. She removed the metal pole from the IV stand base, laying it on the table. Taking the duct tape the janitor had grudgingly provided, she firmly wrapped and secured the sharp glass spearhead to one end. Once the glass shard was tightly bound, Ruby tested the balance and grip of the full spear. The janitor watched warily as she took a few practice jabs. "Okay, She nodded. I'm ready. The janitor smiled. We'll see about that. Ruby held her makeshift spear at the ready. She stepped out into the corridor, not far from the ultrasound unit. Get in, get out, get downstairs. She repeated the mantra. Ruby took a deep breath and crept down the hallway, IV stand poised to strike. The hospital was eerily quiet, except for the buzzing of flickering fluorescent lights. She paused outside the ultrasound unit where this nightmare had started. The door was still closed, locked. She'd have to get back inside the same way she'd escaped. Dragging a gurney to the spot she'd dropped down, Ruby climbed back up into the ceiling. Before she could pull herself up, a bone-chilling screech pierced the air. The spider crab creature skittered around the corner, beady red eyes fixed on Ruby. She swung the IV stand, slashing at its hairy legs. The creature recoiled with an angry hiss. Back off, ugly! Ruby shouted, brandishing her makeshift spear from atop the gurney. She jabbed at the thing's eyes as the gurney wobbled under her. It was useless fighting it here. She needed to get on the other side of that door. Throwing the spear at the thing's eyes, Ruby leapt for the opening in the ceiling. Jumping up, the creature's armored legs smashed at the ceiling as Ruby pulled herself through the spiderweb of metal that held up the ceiling tiles. By the time she made it back into the ultrasound waiting room, she felt like passing out. Her lungs burned as she gasped for air. Sitting on the edge of the receptionist's desk, Ruby tried to catch her breath. The door shook as the spider crab thing rammed it, hissing angrily on the other side. Ruby slid off the desk. She didn't have much time. The door wouldn't hold up under that monster's attack. She needed to get what she came for and get the hell out. In the doctor's office next door to the ultrasound room, there were stacks of papers and folders littering a large desk. No time to be gentle, Ruby thought, as she rummaged through them, dumping searched folders on the ground. It had to be here. Out in reception, the door began to splinter open. Hurry! She threw a stack of papers on the floor. Nothing there. Ruby looked up. There it was, right where the doctor had left it, after showing her. Grabbing her prize, Ruby stuffed it into her hoodie. The wood door splintered under the spider crab's attack. Ruby grabbed a chair, swinging it at the twisted monstrosity. She backed towards the ultrasound room. The door was thicker there. Come on, you ugly son of a bitch! It hissed at her, its demon eyes fixed on their prey. Ruby darted into the ultrasound room. The thing closed in, ready for the kill. She'd only get one shot at what she had in mind. Circling around the large bed at the center of the room, she put it between herself and the angry horror. With all the strength she could muster, Ruby pushed the large bed towards the creature, pinning the spider crab against the wall. Ruby ran for the door. Suddenly, a claw lashed out, grabbing her by the leg. Ruby let out a cry of pain as it dug into her. She furiously kicked at the thing's claw with her free leg, and when that didn't work, she kicked at the bed, ramming it repeatedly into the spider crab until it let her loose. As the beast fought to free itself, Ruby scrambled out the door, slamming it shut in her wake. Inside, the spider crab screeched in protest. Limping back, Ruby found the janitor, sitting on the floor of the boiler room. Ruby threw down the fruits of her quest, a pair of x-rays. It's back, she revealed. It was in remission. Not anymore. There's your story. The man nodded, then stood. Follow me. He led her through a maze of hallways, through the inner recesses of the basement. After what seemed like forever, they arrived at a small flight of concrete steps, headed up to a set of double doors. We had a deal, the janitor said as he pulled out a gold key on a gold chain from his coveralls. And here we are. The exit. Ruby started up the steps and stopped. What's on the other side of those doors? He shrugged. Can't say. Maybe a way back. Maybe more of the same. Maybe nothing. Why? Why do you stay? I've been here a long time. It may be shitty here, but I know what I got. Besides, there's always another asshole coming through. Without me, he shrugged. The lock loudly clicked as he turned the key. So, get going. I'm already bored of you. Ruby smiled. Thanks. Yup. He backed down the stairs. Good luck. And then, she was alone. Ruby put her hand on the door. It was warm to the touch. She took a deep breath and pushed the doors open. Ruby wandered the streets, ghosts and goblins swirling around her, their gyrations fueled by sugar and mischief. But all the Halloween haunts couldn't compare to the horror she now knew existed in between our world and the world beyond. Well, my spookies, I would say that was a straight-up terrifying piece, at least to me. Whew! I'm glad we got a little darkness, we got a little extra fear going for this Halloween episode. And I just want to say, I know I keep saying it, but I just have to say thank you. I cannot tell you how much this show has meant to me, how much happiness this show has brought me, even with the sheer exhaustion of publishing 33 episodes in October. I'm just so grateful. So thank you all so much for the support, for the kind words, for the kind emails. A lot of you have been emailing me at weeklyspooky@gmail.com. Please do, if you have any questions, comments, or your own stories you want to share. It's been incredible to see the show grow so much in the last 4 years. And in this October, we've had more listeners than ever before. So thank you, and I hope many of you will stick around and enjoy a little spooky on your weekly with me. And I also want to say a huge thank you to our Patreon backers. You guys have been amazing helping keep the spooky rolling, and especially our Patreon podcast boosters, folks who pay just a little bit more every month to hear their names at the end of our program. And they are Johnny Nix, Bobbletopia.com, Megan Hua, Julia Kirsch, Brent McCullough, Steve King, Karen Weemet, Jack Kerr, and Craig Cohen. Thank you all so much. And if you want to join that list, go to weeklyspooky.com, click on Patreon, and choose a tier that suits you. At $15 or higher, you'll hear your name at the end of the show. We also have a store with all kinds of spooky merchandise that I know you'll enjoy, but most importantly of all, I hope to see you right back here next time for some more spooky. And yes, there'll be a program tomorrow because tomorrow is Wednesday. So, I guess what I'm saying is, I'll see you all tomorrow. But until then, be careful out there. You never know what portals may open. For myself, for my executive producer Rob Fields, my producer Dan Wilder, and my composer Ray Mattis, I'll talk at you later.
October is over, but please don't be sad. It's always Halloween here at Weekly Spooky. We'll see you sooner than you think.
Hey, since you're still here, here's a little something extra. This is a full overture of the Weekly Spooky theme song recorded for October of 2023 by our composer, Ray Mattis. Jam it out and keep it spooky.